What's going on the Hill that matters to us, we, in our towns?
The Dan York State of Mind program is brought to you in part by Lookout Rhode Island and Taco Comfort Solutions.
You know, I have mentioned over the course of the last handful of years that I think the town governance level of performance in Rhode Island has probably been the best that it has been in a long time, and that elected mayors and town administrators have really kind of stepped up and done their jobs in terms of advocating, trying to keep the tax base somewhat manageable. But it is a constant squeeze, and the League of Cities and Towns here in Rhode Island is tasked with keeping the communities in mind and keeping that level of governance in the mix, because it's really, really important. Everything flows downhill in this state, in most states, and listen, everything flows downhill from Washington to the states to the communities, sometimes from Washington straight to the communities when it comes to money. But there's also a lot of mandating, and there's a lot of legislation, and there's a lot of, hey, blah, blah, blah. And right now, communities here in Rhode Island have a chance to make a couple of decisions, namely on marijuana legislation and a couple of other things that are really important. And the executive director of the League of Cities and Towns is here to talk to us about that. So we'll get into that this evening. Welcome aboard. By the way, I hope you don't go, oh, what's that all? This stuff matters, man. The government in your own community, in your own driveway, matters. And sometimes we kind of take it for granted. We're always talking about the State House or the governor or the speaker. What your select people, what your council people, what your mayor and town administrator does matters. You ought to be paying attention to it. In the meantime, on a national level, this story has kind of hit bigger than it has in the past, maybe because the Ed Secretary has been so clumsy with it. Betsy DeVos, who has reportedly donated a significant amount of money with her I don't take a salary position, right? She is made of money, so she doesn't take her couple of $100,000 that she gets to be the Ed Secretary, and she's donated a portion of that to the Special Olympics in previous years. But she just cut it out completely. $18 million nationally to the Special Olympics, and Rhode Island certainly is impacted by that. Here was Eyewitness News' story on it yesterday.
It's a pretty sad day.
Special Olympics Rhode Island CEO Dennis DeJesus says Rhode Island's Special Olympics program receives about $150,000 to $175,000 from the federal government each year, a relatively small amount compared to the $1.6 million brought in through fundraisers.
So it's not a lot, but it certainly has an impact in our schools.
He says the federal dollars are critical to supporting the Unified Champion Schools program, which creates volleyball and basketball teams made up of students both with and without intellectual disabilities.
It's changing, it's transforming school cultures. Right now, every high school with a special education department has a Unified Champion School program. We're the only state in the country to say that. But it would definitely have an impact on the programs we're trying to bring to our elementary and middle schools.
The proposed budget cuts are receiving backlash from politicians on both sides of the aisle. Cranston's mayor, Republican Alan Fung, tweeted, "As the brother of a Special Olympian and the mayor of a city that celebrates our unified athletic teams, I urge the administration to reverse course and do much better than this."
And I'm very, very hopeful with the leadership of Senator Reid and White House Congressman Cicilline and Langevin that we'll get this funding restored back to where it should be in support of our athletes.
Here's the thing, I've always kind of been the person that says, listen, you got to suck it up sometimes when government needs to be a little bit more austere, right? But this was a part of a 10% cut across the board in education grant funding, but they took all of the $18 million nationally to Special Olympics off the table. So a 10% cut would be $1.8 million, right? Instead they just went, they fundraise well on the ground, let's cut them out. Probably not a good way to do business, and I think that Congress will be able to push this thing back. But stay tuned. And by the way, you can give the Special Olympics, just go to the website, Rhode Island Special Olympics. They are the highest performing per capita Special Olympics organization in the country. And Dennis and the team do an incredible job. We support everything that they do, and all you got to do is spend a little bit of time with their Special Olympics big event in the spring. I think it's May 31st, June 1, and June 2 at URI. and just spend a little time there and realize that the program is just, well, it's inspirational, no doubt about it. All right, let's just check in. We're going to do a little something on this next week. This Supermax debate that's going on, this White House, I should say, the State House problem is an interesting one. It was kind of buried in the budget, but the governor was looking to do some significant rearranging of the deck for the ACI. And the maximum security area is scheduled to be shut down because it needs renovation, and prisoners are going to be dispersed from one place to another, but some inside the facility to other status correctional areas. And the correctional officers are aghast over it, and they're spending $100,000 of their own union dues to argue this thing in public. We'll get Richard Ferruccio in here. He's the head of the Correctional Officers Union, has been there for a long, long time, and see if we can't get a perspective from them and also from the director. I just don't understand why everything has got to be negotiated in the public. This is the kind of thing that everyone ought to sit down at the table and say, all right, listen, what's the best thing for security? How do we protect everybody? And how do we get this kind of thing done? If you need a renovation, you need a renovation. But fighting about this in the public just seems to be, I don't know, it's not like it's a big political ideological thing. It's just how to get things done. It's all part of this. Everything is this. Everything has to be this. I don't think everything has to be this. All right. Well, there's a little of this going on every issue, though, right? Here's the headline for our conversation to begin, at least. So the governor thinks this is more or less a forced hand, and the Rhode Island Police Youth Association is against it, but the own state police superintendent testified that he's going to work with this program, and League of Cities and Towns has its own perspective, and it's important that we get that. Brian, welcome. Nice to have you.
Thanks for having me.
Brian Daniels is the executive director of the League of Cities and Towns. You ever thought, by the way, on this? There's a lot of this. I mean, you're up there all the time. I don't want to draw you in a conversation you weren't scheduled for, but isn't there a lot of this?
No, it's true, and I think particularly this legislative session, we're seeing a lot of controversial topics, a lot of things very early on in the session, which hopefully is good because it gives people time to work it out, and you're not having that big crush of debates at the end of the year. But there are a lot of big topics going on in the State House right now, and they're pretty controversial. Marijuana is just one of the many things we're dealing with up there.
The marijuana thing is in your wheelhouse. I want to talk specifically about that, but give me a bullet point or two or three on what really is in the municipality worry mindset.
On marijuana?
No, on
everything.
On everything.
Yeah, so marijuana is a big one because we want to make sure there's local control of if there is a legalization effort, that cities and towns have control over what goes on in their communities. Labor issues are huge. We're fighting contract continuation, the so-called evergreen contracts, binding arbitration expansion, a new firefighter overtime bill that we've not seen before. And just making sure that there's local control of land use. We're fighting some budget cuts that the governor proposed in her budget for payment in lieu of taxes, which hits Providence and Cranston really hard. That's over $5 million that would be cut this year. That's tough. So we have a lot of fronts that we're fighting on right now.
All right, so why don't we do this? Let's take a pause. We'll come back and we'll start with the marijuana legislation because that seems to be the big buzz in the state right now. Be right back. That's a crazy story. Yeah, so you recognize that, and when you see that, you know what it is, right? You should, anyway. What is your concern about Rhode Island's? First of all, what's your understanding about what you think the Rhode Island proposal means for communities and for the state in general?
Yeah, so this is as you know, the governor proposed the adult use marijuana legalization in her budget in January. And all of our cities and towns are looking at this. We are scrambling, trying to figure out how do we respond to it. And the biggest thing for us is making sure that there's local control. Some communities, as we've seen in Massachusetts, they want to opt out. They say, we don't want any of these establishments, retail, manufacturing, cultivation. We don't want them in our communities, and we think that should be their choice. The governor's proposal, from our perspective, allows communities to keep out marijuana establishments for about 2 years. They can do that through their local ordinances, but then they'd have to have a referendum, a public referendum saying, do you want to continue the ban or not? We think that that should be a local decision. The problem with the governor's proposal, with the way that works, is that if the public referendum fails, then the community has to accept one of each type of license. So if you're a small community or a rural community, all of a sudden you have to have a cultivator, you have to have a retail. It's a lot of different, I think it's 4 or 5 different types of establishments that you would have to have at least one of in that community. So we think that, we have home rule in Rhode Island. We make our decisions on where our liquor stores go, adult entertainment in some communities. We think it needs to be a local decision, and it needs to be a decision by through local ordinance and the councils. And the other big issue for us is making sure that the resources are there, because our mayors and town managers, they talk to their counterparts in Colorado and Massachusetts, Washington, and they know that the impact of legalization is going to land on cities and towns. You're going to have to figure out, if you take establishments, where do you put them? You're going to have public safety impact. You're going to have traffic stops for impaired driving. Police are going to be handling calls about nuisance properties or people not following the law. So there is going to be a local impact. We've seen in Massachusetts, sometimes they open up facilities and it has traffic impacts. So we're going to absorb a lot of those impacts. So we need to make sure that there's the resources behind it, so that whatever the local impact, they can pay for it. The governor's proposal would essentially give about 15% of the total revenues to cities and towns, but we've seen in the past, sometimes in a bad budget year, they pull back some of that state funding. Massachusetts has a 3% local sales tax. We think that's a good thing. We want to talk with the administration about, to make sure that if and when this happens, that the resources are there to handle it.
All right, that was a very thorough answer. Let's go, that's good. Let's go back to the first part of it. I don't think anybody really understands these component obligations that the towns are going to have to kind of decide, kind of as, I don't know, a process of elimination as to what they can deal with. Let's go back to that a little bit and break that down slowly. This is not just a decision on whether there's going to be a fancy retail outlet.
Right.
There's a whole, dig deep on that.
Sure.
Because I think this is something that people need to understand and don't even have a clue about.
Right. So it's not just the retail establishments. That's what everybody thinks about. It's the storefront. That's what people visualize when they see marijuana. But there's also the cultivator. So if it's grown, we have that now. So there are cultivator licenses that support the compassion centers. There's also lab testing and even some manufacturing facilities. So these are the types of other categories of establishment that would be required.
Which operate in relative obscurity.
Right, right. But they're there. And if you have marijuana in a facility, then there is a security risk that goes along with that. So that's something that people want to be aware of. You have to have extra security usually for those facilities. So even if it's in an industrial park, you still need to make sure that there's appropriate security there. Then there could be a local public safety impact. If there's a concern of fire, or if there's a concern of someone breaking in, you have to just be ready for those types of scenarios.
But the legislation, I didn't even realize, does Massachusetts have this also must option of some kind? In other words, you must be able to, over the course of time, take some aspect of the industry's function?
No, some communities are allowed to opt out entirely. So that's something that we're looking to do as well. I'm not sure how many have in Massachusetts. I think a fair number have. And it's a local decision from our perspective. If some communities I know will welcome this and will think it's great, and there will be others that say, we're just not ready to deal with the hassle and the burden of this.
Are you hearing from different communities, different perspectives on this?
Yeah, I think a lot are still figuring it out, because again, it just came out a few months ago. They're really thinking through what is the potential revenue upside, what are the costs that we're going to have. Just even
I see the revenue is negligible.
Yeah, in some cases,
this is a come on, man, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on how the revenue is structured, but in many cases, I think there's some reports out of Massachusetts that it hasn't hit their targets. So that's the cities and towns are figuring that out right now. Some are probably going to pursue it, others won't want it, but the one thing that they all agree on, we have our board meetings, we have a bunch of mayors and town administrators and council members, and they talk about this and they have strong perspectives about what they want in their community, but they agree that it needs to be a local choice.
Policina's been in here, no. Lombardi's been in here, no. That's Johnston and North Providence if you're scoring at home. Very, very aggressive no's. I haven't polled all what is it, 39 communities?
Right.
Under the, is it 39?
39.
Under the course,
Yep.
under the League of Cities and Towns?
Yep.
Is anybody really public about yes, 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 please, 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 let it be me, let it be us?
I have not heard anyone publicly, but I know that there's a lot of cost-benefit analysis, people talking about this internally at the policy level with their finance directors, with their public safety officers. You saw the Police Chiefs Association has some real serious concerns about this. So
To
they want
flat
to make
out
sure,
don't want it.
Yeah, so they
By the way, they were flat out not invited to the table to actually talk about the ramifications of it, which is part of what bothers them.
Yeah, we heard about this shortly before the budget came out. I will say we've had good conversations with the administration. They did make some changes in the last version of this, but we still
From
think
what
that,
to what?
So one of the big ones was the referendum. At first, they were going to have it in November of 2019. In 2019. So no, 2019. So this would
This
have,
November.
This November, right? So this would have essentially said that the budget would pass in June, and cities need to determine within pretty much 5 months what they want to do. Put a special ballot initiative out there, which costs money. No one was ready for that, so they did push it back to November 2020, which puts it in an election year. There's no extra cost, but still. We still think that should be a local decision. They also made some improvements on the employment side. We have a lot of municipal employees that are in public safety, public works.
When you say it ought to be a local decision, it's the referendums will be local referendums.
Correct, right.
Okay, so makes sense. We've got a year and a half-ish. If something in this session passes, communities will have a year and a half to get their acts together on asking the question. But they will allow, if they have an affirmative feeling on a council level, they can
allow it.
by ordinance they can just say, yeah, let's open up a shop.
Correct. Yeah, we think it
Which
should.
is a dangerous political move to make, I think, in your community, given that you probably want to get a referendum to support that.
And that's why our mayors and managers have said if there is a referendum, it should be an opt-in. So to say we're going to have a temporary ban and then do an opt-in so that the public can affirmatively decide, yes, we want to do this, or we want a ban to continue. The way the governor's office, the way the governor's proposal works, you can have a ban, but if the referendum fails, then you're forced to take one of all of these different categories of license, even if it's more than what the community wants.
You know, it's really interesting. I asked this question at the beginning. We can legislate legalizing marijuana, but if nobody wants to facilitate it,
Right.
what happens?
Yeah. So it's a good question.
Right?
Yeah.
If they go 0 for 39,
I have a feeling there will be some that are interested. But you're right. It's a difficult decision because you want some sense that the public wants it. I think people are going to take a look at some polling data. Our communities are small. You can have open meetings on this and discuss it with people.
well, it's a very different thing between the consumer public wanting it and the governing public dealing with it.
Right, that's very true.
They're very different things. Interesting. All right, there's a couple of major things, as Brian told us, on the agenda. We'll hit those when we come back. Stay with us. And then there's this thing called binding arbitration, which we talk about all the time around here. The League of Cities and Towns has a constant friendly debate going on with labor, sometimes not so friendly, over how to bargain. And this year's argument, again, is what?
So there are a couple components. The first one that we've seen before is the contract continuation or evergreen. The governor vetoed this 2 years ago. This essentially would say for municipal employees and teachers, if a contract expires and you're in the middle of negotiating it, it would go on indefinitely. Now,
Meaning the terms of the expired agreement
go on indefinitely.
yes.
Right. Now, generally speaking, most of our managers and mayors do that as just good negotiating. They negotiate in good faith, and they extend them. Both sides agree to extend on a temporary basis. The concern we have with the evergreen contract is that it gets rid of the end date, and it gets rid of that pressure to come back to the table. And the governor's
It also gets rid of the flexibility to, if you need to, make cuts.
Right. And that's exactly what the governor's veto message 2 years ago said. New York State had evergreen contracts, and when the recession came, most people just sat on their existing contracts, didn't come back to the table, and so ultimately cities and towns had to either cut services or increase taxes because they couldn't get at some of those benefits. One thing that's important, I think, for you and your viewers to watch, to understand is that 75% of municipal budgets, generally speaking, are personnel. So that's salary, that's benefits, that's pensions and retiree health benefits. If you wall off all of those 75% of your budget, then there's not much left. So that's what drives us crazy with the General Assembly. They say you can't touch that 75%, whether evergreen contracts or binding arbitration.
That's a problem. But inside that, which is walled off, the pension and OPEB problems, the other post-employment benefits, healthcare, are about, I mean, they've already imploded. It's just, no one's decided to get a mop and try to clean this stuff up off the floor. There are cities in this state right now that have got to combine their liabilities and look for a state solution to work out of this thing. Are you guys working actively on that?
Yeah, it's OPEB, I think, is the one area that really makes
hundreds of millions of dollars of unfunded liabilities per city down the line.
And the hardest problem is that, so the state did pension reform for the cities and towns that were in the state system, so they had some improvement. But for the pensions that are in the municipally run programs, not the state system, and the OPEB, the retiree health, those are all contractual. And it's really hard to unwind or to modify benefits. We just saw this in Warwick. It's really hard to change those without the state or someone else stepping in and giving that authority. So we have these hundreds of millions of dollars of liability. The Treasurer is working on updating that OPEB liability number. We're curious to see how that comes out. But that's on the horizon, and that's going to crush everybody on top of everything else.
There ought to be some kind of superseding state law that says no more renewal of contracts until these contracts run out. And then we're going to have to pool everybody. We're going to have to reorganize this thing. Yeah. Or no one is going to, you know what, down the line, no public employee is going to be able to get to the doctor because there's going to be no coverage for them.
Exactly.
Right? I mean, this is everybody's problem.
Right. And what's frustrating from the binding arbitration component is that if you're in the state system or if you don't have a local law, an arbitrator, an unelected arbitrator from out of state, can hand out pension or retiree health benefits and create millions of dollars of out-year liabilities.
They come in, they swoop in, they make a decision, they loan, say good luck to you.
Yeah.
How you pay for it, they're supposed to consider how you pay for it.
We find that, they don't really do that.
No.
Yeah, so we have a proposal that we're working on that we're trying to get introduced in the legislature that would say that an arbitration award can't exceed a budgeted level. So you shouldn't be able to blow a hole in a community's budget halfway through the year. Everything should have a price tag. Every arbitration decision, you should know how much it costs, you should know what the out-year liability, the councils should look at that, the public should look at that when they're determining whether or not they can afford those awards.
Right. In general, I got 30 seconds here. I'm sure you agree with me that the governing platform on a city and town level has been pretty good. You've got a good group right now.
Yeah.
And so now's the time to strike because I've never seen more, I don't know, respect or equity on the municipal level.
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
got to get some work done.
Yeah, good point.
Right?
Yep.
All right, charge.
Yeah.
Thanks for the update. Just figure that marijuana thing out on your own. Crazy. Final word when we come back. Stay with us. Alrighty, so listen, I don't think a lot of you really realized about these multiple components in the legislation for marijuana legalization. If you don't take this, you might have to take that. You know, you don't want a lab in your town for marijuana? Well, you may probably want to speak up about how this whole law is coming down the pike. And by the way, I don't see a lot of dough for you. Just saying. All right, some turbulence at the State House and a fair mind to analyze it tomorrow night. We'll see you on the radio at 3 as well on WPRO. Take care.